Most High be praised. The Most High be praised. Grateful to the Almighty for this teaching time. I want to say welcome to each and every one of you. Welcome to those of you who are joining us by live stream for our class. This class is dealing with the subject of paganism, and we're going to look at lesson 3 on paganism. And before we delve into lesson 3, we are going to touch on a few things that we covered in our last 2 lessons dealing with paganism. So let's begin with a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for your mercies, your kindness, and your goodness toward us. We thank you for another opportunity to be able to provide teaching on a subject that is of importance for us as believers to be aware of, to help us to identify those things that are considered by you as being an abomination. For it helps us to know what to look out for. It helps us to be able to discern between righteousness and unrighteousness. And I ask that as we get into this 3rd lesson, that you would help us to be informed and to be able to know where paganism lies, so that we might be able to stay on the right path according to the scriptures. We thank you today in the mighty name of Yahshua. Amen. So, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, we want you to know that this course is dealing with the concept of paganism and the religious system that exists in our world that is opposed to the original way of the Creator. Some of the things that's important for us to be mindful of as it pertains to paganism is that paganism is a counterfeit religious system, and what it has done, it has taken from the original way of faith that the Most High initially began through Adam, which is a faith in him and a worship towards him exclusively. And it has reduced the worship of Elohim to a worship of the creation, a worship of the sun, worship of the moon, the stars, the constellations, and even man himself. So we want to be mindful of what paganism looks like. What's important for us to understand is that paganism, being a broad term, it's a term that includes all of the religious systems that share the commonalities of worship of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the cycles as they relate to the sun and the moon. Okay, that's important for us to know as well. Also, we need to know, which was covered in our first lesson, has to do with the fact that paganism is the visible manifestation of the kingdom of darkness. That is something I would say by far is of utmost importance, is that particular part. There'll be many who probably would not identify paganism as that outward expression of the kingdom of darkness. But what we had covered in lesson 1 was that there are two opposing systems in the earth. We have the kingdom of Elohim, and we also have the kingdom of darkness. We discussed in detail about the kingdom of darkness, how the kingdom of darkness is under the authority of Hasatan, that's Satan, and how that the pagan religious system is the outward expression of the kingdom of darkness, because its aim is to divert men from the path of worship of the Most High through the Messiah, Yeshua. So those are some very important things for us to be mindful of. Now, today we're going to look at the pagan calendar. That's what we're going to look at today. We talked about the common features of pagan worship traditions. We covered that in lesson 2. Talked about the system of worship that was polytheistic, that's common, that there's sun veneration, that's common. Also, there is the mother deity and child veneration, along with the worship of the creation. We also gave some names of some of the pagan deities within different pagan traditions. And so now we want to look at the pagan calendar. We're going to look at the days of the week. We're going to look at the months of the year. And we're going to look at the major annual feasts in the pagan calendar. And so as we begin to delve into this, what we really begin to see is the outworking of the pagan religious system in the lives of people. And as we talk about these things, we're going to discover that paganism is alive and well in our day and has been since its inception. So this is very important for us to be mindful of. So now we want to begin with the days of the week. Now, as we look at this here, we need to note that the days of the week had been named after the pagan deities. And when we look at the names of the days of the week, and I'm referring to the days of the week that we use, because we're in a pagan culture, we're going to find out how alive and well paganism is. So here's a list of the days most of us are familiar with. In the English language, we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Now, when we look at the word Sunday, Sunday is named after the sun deity, and it is the day that gives honor to the sun. In the Roman culture, the sun deity, as we have already noted in a previous lesson, is called Sol Invictus, meaning the unconquered sun. And this particular day was a day that was set apart and sacred within Roman culture. We see a real great evidence of this when we go into the 4th century, into the 300s of the Common Era, CE or AD, if you want to use that particular dating. And what we find is that the Emperor Constantine had made a law of honoring Sunday the day given as a day of honor to the sun deity. Now, what about Monday? Monday, the name is in honor of the deity of the moon, or as some would say, the moon god. What about Tuesday? Tuesday is named after the Norse deity. And this particular Norse deity was a son of Odin. For those who are not familiar with Odin, and we'll talk a little bit about Odin, his name is pronounced a number of ways, but the name of Odin's son is called Tui. That would be T-I-W. That's the way we would spell it in English, but you know, it's pronounced Tui. That's where we get the word Tuesday from. Mm-hmm. This is the son of Odin, one of Odin's sons. Wednesday. When we look at Wednesday, we pronounce Wednesday, but the way Wednesday is pronounced, the proper pronunciation would be Wednesday or Wednesday. So when you pronounce Wednesday, originally that's how it's pronounced, Wodan's Day. For Wodan, Odin, this is the day that is given in honor of Odin. Odin is the king of the Norse deities. Okay? Now, Odin, his name is pronounced a couple different ways. You can pronounce Odin's name as Wodan. By the Celts, they pronounce Odin's name Wodan, W-O-D-A-N, Wodan. And in Scandinavia, they pronounce his name as Odin. Okay, same deity. Because these peoples are basically from the same root, in that they came from the Germanic tribes. You had the Germanic tribes that were living in the area of the Rhineland in Germany. They migrated northward up into the region that is called Scandinavia, like such Norway, Sweden, Denmark, those areas. Those are peoples that come from the Germanic tribes, and they all share the same religion, their deity. They called him Odin, whereas those who stayed in Europe, Central Europe, and migrated over to Western Europe, over into the area of Britain, they called Odin Wodan. So Wednesday, as we call it Wednesday, but it's Wodan's Day. It's the way it's spelled is W-E-D-N-E-S. That's Wednesday will be Woden. That's how it would be pronounced. Okay, but it's pronounced Wednesday. Odin's Day. So Wednesday is the day of the week that gives homage to Odin. Matter of fact, the last, well, I won't say last, I'll say the middle 4 days of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, are all named after the Norse deities. All right? So we see Tuesday is named after Odin's son. Wednesday is named after Odin, whose name is Wodan. Also, Odin's name is also Godan. It's also pronounced Godan, G-O-D-A-N, as well as W-O-D-A-N. And when we look at those different names for Odin, Odin's name was shortened to Wat, W-O-T-T, and Got, G-O, I'm sorry, G-O-T-T. God. So when you look at the etymology, and I know I'm adding something in here based upon this name, but when we look at the etymology of the word that we so often use to refer to the Almighty as God, G-O-D, the reality is that particular name is an abridged or shortened, a shortened name for Odin or Godon, because Godon, which among the Germans, G-O-T-T, that's how you say God in German. But that's also the shortened version for Goton. I didn't mention that also. Odin, his name is pronounced Godon, Goton, G-O-T-T-A-N, as well as G-O-D-D-A-N. It's pronounced both ways because the D and the T are very similar. It just has to do with how you accent the sound of it. But the etymology of the word God comes from the shortened version of the name Odin. So that's something interesting to note. Thursday, day, I guess that would be what, day 5 of the week? Thursday is named after Thor. Thor is another one of Odin's sons. For those who are familiar with comic books or the legends of Thor or the movies that have Thor, he has the hammer. Thor, yeah, Thursday is named after Thor. It's called Thor's Day. Okay? Friday. Friday is named after Woden's wife. His wife's name is Frigga. So Frigga is Odin's wife. And Frigga is also the deity of fertility as well among the pagan Norse people. So when we see the name Friday, not really knowing that it's named after a deity of fertility, the wife of Odin, we don't really catch the spirit that's attached to it. I tend to be a believer that names are significant, and that names also carry a certain spirit along with it. Because the thing that we need to be mindful of is that when the pagans would give tribute and honor to these deities on these particular days, there were certain things that they would do that were associated with these deities. For example, when you would honor the deity of fertility, one of the ways in which the deity of fertility was honored was through the sex act that was performed by people who were not married to each other. Because in the pagan cultures, the sex act was something that was not limited to a married couple. It was something that was performed as a part of a religious practice in pagan cultures. And so that's something that we need to be mindful of. So when I think about Friday in the modern world, it's a time when people get ready to go out, and as they say, they're going to go party. Well, what that means is that they are intending to go and express themselves in a way that is not in accordance or outside the boundaries of the scriptures and the commandments that we hold to be true. I remember listening to people talk about what they were going to do on Friday night, that they would talk about going out to go party and go to, as they termed it, the meat market. And we know what that meant. It meant a person going out and looking for someone to have sex with. That was the idea, what people wanted to do on Friday night. So Friday, in my opinion, in my belief, it carries a spirit with it because of the association to the deity of fertility. Now, of course, these names that I just gave are associated with the Western culture, primarily, with the European deities. The Europeans from Central and Western Europe, and also from Scandinavia, and also the deities that were in Rome. Now, the reason why the deities that are in Rome are also associated with this, because you see, the Roman culture had a great influence on the European cultures that were north of Rome, such as Germany. I mean, Germany is right above Rome. Okay, so you have these cultures. Now, if you were to go into other cultures, say if you were to go into Egypt, you were to go to India, the names of the week are different. But the concepts here, the homage that's given to the particular deities, though, on these days of the week are very much the same. Okay? That's important for us to be mindful of. Like, for example, if we're to talk about, say, for example, Tuesday is called Martes in Spanish. And that's named after the deity called Mars. Okay? So when you start dealing with the Latin cultures, you're going to see more of the Roman deities expressed. Because Spanish, French, Latin, they're all Latin, Roman-based languages, Roman-based cultures. So you're going to see the names of these deities that are associated with the Roman deities. Okay? So that's important. But the names that we have here, that we're associated with here in the United States and in most of the European countries, is because these are the names of those pagan deities that the peoples from a what we call pre-Christian era worshipped. Okay? That's why we have these names. And it's just interesting to me that even after Christianity came into these regions, that they still kept the same names for these days of the week. Just a thought. That's why I said that I find paganism to still be alive and well. That somehow with the introduction of the faith in Messiah, there's still the elements of the pagan culture that's still there. Whether it's in the days of the week, whether it's in the terms that are used to refer to the Almighty, we still see it there. But many within the framework of the faith are unaware of the paganism or the pagan influence that is there. All right? Now, the last day of the week, seventh day of the week, is called Saturday. And of course, we use these words in our way of trying to relate to those who are in this world that we live in, because they don't know any other terms to use for the days of the week in the nations of what we call the modern world. So Saturday is named after Saturn. Saturn is the Roman deity of agriculture. Okay? Roman deity of agriculture. Right? Saturn. So Saturday is named after Saturn. Now, something that I want to point out about Saturday is that, seeing that it is named after Saturn, that indicates that the people would be involved in agricultural activity on Saturday. That would be like planting, gardening, doing some type of work. Now, in the ancient time, those who kept the Sabbath of the house of Israel, and also the Messianic Israelite community, would always find themselves in conflict with the pagan Roman community. Because the pagan Roman community would view Judean Israelites as being lazy because they did not work on Saturday. Because that day is the seventh day of the week to the Hebrew, to the Israelite. That day is the Sabbath. But to the Roman would see the Israelite as lazy, because they didn't work on Saturday, and they didn't, they already knew that they were not honoring the deity of Saturn, but they found that to be odd, because everyone else did. Now, what I find interesting about Saturday, and this is, and I'm saying this because prior to my own personal relationship with Elohim and my own personal understanding of keeping the Sabbath of the Creator, and those things that we understand from the scriptures as being essential and important to the Creator. On Saturday, that would be the day I remember when my father would get up in the morning and go cut the grass. That'd be the day of, get in the yard looking nice, cut the grass, edge the grass, pull the weeds, all those things. And everyone else in the community was doing the same thing. It's common. Now, what's interesting to me, and I'm not saying that my father or my grandfather or those that had their hands in my raising were individuals that worshipped the deities of Rome. I'm not saying that they worshipped the deities of Rome. They just lived life and did things according to how the culture was doing it. But what we see is that the influence of paganism, whether directly or indirectly, has influenced people to perform activities, whether they realize it or not, that actually pay tribute to these deities. When we look at Saturday, Saturday is the name of the Roman deity of agriculture. Just an observation. Just an observation. So there are a lot of things that we find that from the pagan culture, the overarching influence of the pagan culture that still pervades the world that we live today. Even though if you were to go and speak to the average individual and say, well, do you worship Saturn? They'd probably say, no, I worship no Saturn. That's Greek mythology. So I don't believe in that. But if you examine the patterns of people and the things that they do on these different days of the week, what we find is that there is a conditioning that has become a part of Western cultural existence. There's a conditioning in the Western world where people perform activities that are directly in alignment with paying tribute to these deities, whether we realize it or not. So here are the days of the week. This is the first part of the pagan calendar. Now we want to look at the months of the year. Now what we notice about the months of the year within the pagan calendar is that the months of the year are based upon a solar cycle. I'll say it again. The months of the year in the pagan calendar are based upon a solar cycle. That means it's based upon the sun. Now, the first thing that I need to note is that the solar cycle for determining the months is not in accordance with the manner in which the Creator has ordained for the months of the year. The way in which the Creator has ordained the months of the year is based upon a lunar cycle, based upon the moons, not based upon a solar cycle and then creating the months, which is what has been done in the pagan calendar. So we want to look at the names of the months of the year. Now, the names of the months of the year are all dedicated to deities as well. Now, what we're going to look at, the names of the months that are associated with the Roman system, and also we're going to look at some of the names of the months that are the same as, well, I'll just say that the name is not the same, but we're going to look at the same particular month that's used during the same particular time of the year that's given a different name. Either it's the Egyptian name or it might be the Canaanite name that a particular month is associated with. So you'll hear me use a couple different names that these months are associated with. Now, when we look at the months of the last 4 months of the year, called September, October, November, and December, those names are not names of deities as they are names of numbered months. Okay? And I'm going to talk about that. So, first month of the year is January. And January is named after Janus. It's a Roman deity. Okay? So most of these months that we're familiar with from the calendar that we look at are Roman-based names. And there again, the reason why we have these months that are named after Roman deities is because the Western culture is a product of the Roman culture. Okay? Plain and simple. Rome extended its empire to the furthest west of Europe. The Roman Empire was all the way into Britain. Okay? That's about the furthest you can get to. That's where they were. They were in Britain. So Roman culture had a powerful influence on the people of Britain, on the people that were later called the English, the Anglo-Saxons, the writing system of the English people. Now we call English, you know, that writing system where we get our A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that whole lettering system is a Roman lettering system. The English didn't come up with the lettering system. Okay, we need to know that. No, they didn't develop their own lettering system. They got that from the Romans. That was borrowed from the Romans. All right, the numbering system, such as our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The numbering system was also a borrowed numbering system. Most will call it the Arabic numbering system. But the Arabic numbering system finds its roots in the Hebrew numbering system, because they're Shemitic in origin. Okay? So when we look at the Western culture, Western civilization, we need to understand that the whole Western culture is built upon Rome and Greek thought, Roman and Greek thought. Okay? That's important. So when we look at the months that we have, that we use, it's named after these Roman deities. All right. So we have Janus. That's the name given for January. But also this same month is also dedicated to Nut. Nut is one of the deities of Egypt. Okay? Then we have February. February is dedicated to Astarte. Astarte is a name of the Canaanite deity of fertility, which is also synonymous with Ishtar. We have March. March is named after Mars, who is the Roman deity of war. And also, March is also dedicated to Ostara. We have April. April is dedicated to a pagan deity called Ma'at. It's an Egyptian deity. We have May. May is dedicated to Isis. Isis is the name of an Egyptian deity of fertility. Matter of fact, Isis is Osiris's wife in the pagan Egyptian system. Now, June is named after and dedicated to the female deity called Juno, and also to the Greek deity Hera. Okay? Now, July, the name July is named after Julius Caesar. Okay? It's important for us to know. That's where we get July from. And Julius Caesar, being one of the emperors of Rome, considered himself to be on the same plane as a deity. Okay? July is also dedicated to the deity called Sekhmet, which is a Egyptian deity. The name August. August is named after Augustus Caesar. Okay? So these names that we are familiar with in our months of the year, we find that they are either named after deities or they're named after Roman emperors who saw themselves as deities. This is what we find. Okay? Now, the name September the name September means 7. It's regarded as the 7th month. Okay? But also, this particular month is dedicated to the deity called Pomona. All right? October is dedicated to Hathor, which is another deity. But October refers to the 8th month. Okay? Like octagon. October refers to the 8th month. November refers to the 9th month. But that particular month is also dedicated to a deity called Hecate. December, the name in and of itself refers to the 10th month, but it's dedicated to the deity called Vesta. Okay? So, the last 4 months, and I'm just looking at the names of those months, because this is something that's important for us to understand about how these names found themselves in the Roman calendar as names. So what it does, it gives us an evidence of the fact that originally, the Roman-based calendar, somewhere in its ancient past, followed the same system that the Almighty had given. And I'm going to show you why. Okay, September is the 7th, October is 8, November is 9, December is 10. But in the Roman calendar system, December is regarded as the 12th month, right? But the name indicates 10th month. So when we look at this, we have to ask, how did that happen? So somewhere in the history of Rome, at least among those peoples of Rome in the ancient time, they made a change in their calendar to begin their year during the season when everything is dying. During the season immediately following the winter solstice. That's what we see happening. Because you see, when we consider the calendar of the Creator, which we see expressed through what we call the biblical Israelite calendar, the beginning of the year for us begins somewhere during March or April. And it all has to do with when the new moon arrives after the time that the barley has been identified as being ripened. And that's normally somewhere around March or April. Okay? So when you begin the year on that cycle, basically when springtime begins, you start the year there. When you come down to the 7th month, you are now hitting what is called September. Okay? The 7th month. So when we look at September, October, November, based upon the original calendar, based upon the lunar cycle, then we find that September would be during the time of the 7th month, according to the biblical cycle. And October would be the 8th month, November the 9th month, December the 10th month. It would all fall in place. Is this making sense? See? So when we look at those last 4 months of the year, what we see there is an evidence that this pagan calendar at some time in the ancient past of Rome, they actually were following the original calendar of the Creator. Because see, when the Almighty made everything, He made everything and He set the calendar in place where all human beings were following His cycles. Okay? Is that making sense? Right? But when man chose to deviate worship of the deities, and they began to give homage to the deity of the sun, everything focused around the sun now. Everything revolved around the significance of the sun. So what happens is when you get to, say, December 21st to December 25th, you have at that time what is called the winter solstice, where the sun dies and resurrects or is rebirthed. Okay? And then it begins its cycle where it goes from the shortest day of the year to now becoming ever increasingly longer, where you have the daylight beginning to increase. So, in setting up the calendar to honor this significant change, you have the beginning of the year starting in what we call January. Okay? So, that's when the year began. Now, when they made this change, they shifted from the March, April to now January. And they gave certain names of the months to their deities, but the last 4 months they left in place. All right? It's making sense? They left those names in place. September, October, November, December. Mm-hmm. So when you look at September, September is not called the 7th month. September is called the 9th month, right? Wow. But the name September means 7th. Doesn't make any sense, does it? But they left those months there. October means 8, November means 9, December means 10. Right? This is all evidence to the fact that somewhere in the past they were actually following the way of the Creator. Because at one point in time, all men followed the calendar of the Most High. But as they began to worship the creation instead of the Creator, which we talked about in our first lesson, we talked about that the system of paganism is designed to worship the creation and not the Creator. When they began to do that, they made changes. Paul said that they had, it says that, matter of fact, let me just go there. I'm going to go there because I want us to read this because it's very, very important. I want to read Romans chapter 1, verse 18 through 24. Because after I read these verses, you can see how that in the design of the pagan calendar, you'll see how that they left from the worship and serving of the Almighty to worshiping and serving the creation. These are just things that I think is important for us to understand, because we have many, many evidences to show that men started off knowing Elohim, knowing his plans, knowing his purposes, and then perverted it. Began to do his own thing. Changed the calendar of the Almighty. Instead of following the lunar cycle, they chose to follow the cycle that revolved around the worship of the sun. because the word month comes from moon. That's important for us to know. The word month comes from the word moon. So it only makes sense that if you're going to call something a month, then you should be doing it based upon the fact that you're looking at the moon to determine a cycle. And the moon runs on a 29.5 or 29.6 day cycle. So what happens is that the months on the lunar cycle, it goes 29 days one month, then 30 days the next month, and it kind of alternates that way because you don't see a 0.5 or a 0.6 in a day, right? You don't see that, okay? But that's generally what happens when you look at the lunar cycle, all right? But when we look at the months as they are designed in the solar calendar cycle, you don't see 29 days. You see the 30 or 31 days, right? Because they have created their own month, originally based upon the lunar cycle, but they created a set time for months based on a solar cycle, and also the beginning of each month with reference to the solar cycle is not determined by when the crescent of the moon shows up to mark a new moon or new month, okay? So let me get to this scripture here. I just want to read this. All right. Romans chapter 1, I'm going to read verse 18 through 24. Okay, it says, "For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness, or all unpiety, or wickedness, and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness." I'll read that part again. Who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Okay? Those who walk in what we call this paganistic system, who live this paganistic lifestyle, are walking in a way that was created by those who held the truth in unrighteousness. Okay? Mm-hmm. See, those who developed the system of paganism were not men and women that were completely devoid of the Creator. They knew the way of the Creator. What they did was corrupt it. That's what they did. They corrupted it. It says, who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of Elohim is manifested in them. For Elohim has showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew Elohim, you hear all of this? It's talking about they knew Elohim, right? They glorified him not as Elohim, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart were darkened. Professing themselves to be wise. You hear that? They profess themselves to be wise. They said, we got all the answers, right? They became fools and changed the glory of the uncorruptible Elohim into an image like to corruptible man and the birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore Elohim also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts. I'm just going to stop right there. So the point that I'm trying to make has to do with the fact that, at least as it relates to the calendar, we have an evidence that shows that at some point in time, the people that developed and carried out this pagan system of religion at one point or another were actually following the true path of Elohim. And we kind of see this evidence here in the calendar, where we have these months, that clearly reflect the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th month of the calendar of the Most High when you start the year off in the spring. Okay? So this is a worthy evidence. Now I'm going to talk about major annual feasts. Talk about the winter feasts. Now this particular lesson is going to take a little bit longer than the ones that we have covered before, but we should be through with this hopefully in the next 10 to 15 minutes. I'm just going to cover the major annual feasts. We want to start with the winter festivals. I want you to hear this with respect to the winter festivals and some of the practices that we find here within these pagan deities, in this pagan system. We talked about the Norse system. We talked about the Roman system. We talked about the Egyptian system. We gave information about the Babylonian system. We talked about their deities, some of the names of their deities. And now we're going to talk about the festivals. So December 19th is the day regarded as the beginning of the festival of the return of the sun god, or the sun deity. This is a Druid festival of Alban Arthuan. This is a Druid festival. It begins December 19th, and it's a festival that honors the sun, the return of the sun. Okay? December 21st through December 25th is the old Egyptian festival of Isis, the Magna Mater. Magna Mater means mother of God and mother of all, giving birth to the god Horus. So from December 21st through December 25th, this is the Egyptian festival of Isis, where she gives birth to Horus. Now, isn't this interesting? We're talking about celebrations that were going on for over 5,000 to 6,000 years before Messiah came into the world. This practice was going on. Notice what it said, December 21st through December 25th. This was the festival of Isis. So we talked about the mother goddess and child veneration. So here you have the mother goddess and child veneration. We have a festival where we have Isis giving birth to Horus. Horus is the son of Osiris. Okay? Now, this is just one particular pagan religious tradition among the Egyptians. This same scenario is celebrated among the Celtic peoples as well. So I'll continue on. Then there's December 22nd, which is the winter solstice, which is also a celebration where the sun stops. Solstice means sun stopping. It's where the sun reaches a point where it's at its shortest amount of time that you have for a day. So when daylight is the shortest, that's when winter solstice begins. It stops for about a good 3 days, and then after 3 days, then the sunlight begins to increase on each day. That begins on December 22nd. Some would note it as December 21st. But December 22nd is called the winter solstice. 3 days after that, that takes you to December 25th. That's regarded as the day in which the sun god is born or is reborn. See that the whole idea of the sun being reborn on the 25th of December is what happens during winter solstice. On December the 24th, this is the Celtic tree month. It is called the month of reed ends. Tree month of elder begins. December 25th. December 25th is the European feast of Herne. Frey. Remember Frigga? We were talking about Frigga. Frigga is also, Frey is also a name for Frigga. Okay? The Norse deity. All right? So the European feast of Herne, Frey, and Dionysus. These three deities. It's all associated with the birth of the God who is the God of light, the light of the world. That's what this is all associated with on December 25th. So in the European cultures, they also have a celebration where the birth of the light of the world is being honored. Same as with what's going on in Egypt with the festival of Isis, right? Same stuff going on, different names for the different fertility deities and also their sun deity, the deity that is born. That's this light of the world, okay? Different names, same idea, same concept. All of it comes out of Babylon. Now, also, there is the celebration of the Norse Yule. The Norse Yule. Now, how many of y'all remember this particular song during Christmas time for those who celebrate the 25th of December? They celebrate Christmas. I don't celebrate that particular. I don't celebrate the Messiah on that particular day. But there's a song that is sung when people are Christmas caroling. And it's called Deck the Halls. And in the song Deck the Halls, there's a part in the song where it speaks about the Yule log burning. Okay? The Yule log, that's Y-U-L-E. And it also talks about Yule tide in the song. Okay, Deck the Halls. All right? That song says nothing about Christ. It says nothing. It says, it talks about Yuletide and it talks about the Yule log. And so this song actually came out of the pagan Norse Yule celebration that's done between December 25th and January 5th. This is the Norse Yule celebration. The Old Norse festival honoring Frey. We see that name Frey again. All right? And Freya. Deities of fertility. All right? These deities of fertility. I talked about Frigga. I said she was a deity of fertility earlier. So these deity of fertility, they have their newborn son of light. So let me just go ahead and read this. Old Norse festival of Yule, honoring Frey and Freya, deities of fertility, and the newborn Baldur, god of light, with evergreens. These are evergreen trees. Got a lot of them here in Washington, don't we? You know, the whole idea of the tree, the Christmas tree, you set up an evergreen tree. All of this was done in the Yule celebration. Before the whole idea of Christ and Christmas tree, all that, no. This is a Yule celebration, okay? Honoring the newborn god of light, Baldur, with evergreens, fires, and feastings. Beginning on December 25th, through January 5th. So these are all the winter festivals, all of them associated with honoring the sun. They're all associated with giving homage to the birth of the God of light, light of the world. And so when we look at this, this is all within the pagan structure. When we look at what was already being practiced and celebrated within the pagan structure and the pagan system, when Christianity, the message of the Messiah, came into these areas, into these regions, it was easy to transition over Yeshua, who is called the light of the world. He's called the Son of Elohim. You know, there are commonalities that are seen here. You have Yeshua being called the Son of Elohim and the light of the world, but the pagans also had their light of the world also, which was a son of their deity also, right? So we have all of this similarity. But what happened was that with the Roman Catholic Western religious system, as they began to missionize, they also blended together these pagan cultural practices and meshed together the concept of the Messiah with these pagan practices. So when they decided that they would come up with a birthday for Yeshua, because you got to be mindful of the fact, round about the 4th century and moving forward, they had already washed out everything that had any Hebrew, Israelite, Judean significance. They had washed all that out. Okay, they had Romanized, Europeanized the faith. It was easy for them now to say that, well, the birthday of the Messiah will be on December the 25th. Well, it's quite obvious. After we have read all of this and looking at the major winter festivals that's within the framework of paganism, we see it in 3 different places. Among the Egyptians, among the Europeans, and also amongst the Scandinavian people. All of them were celebrating the birth or rebirth of the sun deity, whom they called the light of the world, during that time of December 25th, 21st through the 25th, somewhere during that time, celebrating winter solstice. And now, with the introduction of the message of Yeshua, they just blended all that together. So when we see these things, it's important for us to recognize that there was a pagan blending with the Christian faith, okay? And it's very easily seen when we look at the pagan practices that were already in existence. Now let's look at the spring, winter, not winter, but spring festival, excuse me. March 20th or March 21st. We have what is called the spring equinox or the vernal equinox. Okay? That's when the first day of spring begins. All right? And we know that Passover always occurs after the vernal equinox. So during this time of the spring, you have your fertility festivals. This is where you have emphasis placed upon the deities of fertility. Okay? You have the Ostara festival, and it marks the beginning of spring. Now, Ostara is a name of one of the deities of fertility. Ostara is also associated with Ishtar. So when we think about the name Easter, it comes from Ishtar, Ostar. This is Ostara, okay? And another name is Eostar. That's another name that's associated with Easter. Okay? This holiday represented the first creation, the beginning of spring. Okay? Now, mind you, when spring begins, according to the biblical calendar, that's the beginning of the new year. Okay? So there's some things in here that you're going to see that is, I would say, it's derived from the original, but it's been corrupted because it's giving homage to these deities. So this holiday represents the first creation, but also the annual creation, where planting of crops, and the crops grow each year. And most symbolic, the perpetual creation. So in the mind of the pagan, during the time of spring, it's marking the beginning of creation. It's marking also the annual creation because it has to do with the whole idea of renewal. All right? The renewal of the year, and also the perpetual creation. So fertility symbols abound during this particular season. Some of those fertility symbols are eggs. Those are fertility symbols. The reason why the egg is a fertility symbol is because it's believed that the world was created out of an egg. All right? That's a part of the pagan system. Also, rabbits are a fertility symbol during the spring. If you notice, since spring has come, if you look around here in Washington, you'll notice that there's an abundance of rabbits. They start to just produce like crazy. Anywhere you go, you know, during the springtime, you'll see rabbits all over the place because they produce a lot, okay? March 29th is the festival of Ishtar. So you have the Ishtar festivals that occur towards the end of March. That's the Babylonian pagan festival of fertility. You also have the festival of Delphenia, which is a Greek deity of fertility. March 30th, you have Eostar's Day. Now, Eostar is the Germanic name for Easter, whereas Easter would be the English name. Eostar is the German name. Now, if you know anything about English, English is a Germanic name because the peoples are from the Germanic tribes. Okay? So you're going to see these names that are similar. So when you see Eostar, it's Easter. It's referring to the same thing. And when you see Ishtar, that's all connected. Ishtar, Easter, Eostar, all connected, referring to the same deity of fertility. Okay? April 22nd, excuse me. April 22nd is regarded as Earth Day. Day to honor the earth and to mediate on deity manifesting as Mother Earth. So when you hear this whole phrase, Mother Earth, that whole idea is directly from paganism. When it refers to the earth as mother, that's a pagan concept. Okay? There are many believers who use this phrase, Mother Earth, and don't even know that they're using pagan terminology. All right? It's important to know. Also, during this time, we have another festival to Ishtar during that time, around April 22nd. And also, there is a festival that's held in Japan called the Feast of the Divine Couple. Now, the Feast of the Divine Couple, the phrase couple, what that means is the act of sex. It's not referring to a couple of people. The term couple or coupling, when you hear the term coupling, that means the act of joining. It's the sex act. the Feast of the Divine Couple. See, all of these fertility deity celebrations were practiced all over the world during the springtime. Okay? And all of it has its roots in Babylon and its pagan system that it originated before the Almighty confounded the languages. Okay? Now let's look at the fall festivals. These festivals are held during the fall, when everything begins to start its process of dying out. October 31st, that's a very familiar date. Halloween is celebrated on that date, right? There's a celebration that Halloween gets its practices from. Okay? So, October 31st, we have the celebration of what is called Samhain. Samhain. Now, the way in which Samhain is spelled is not the way in which the name is spelled. I mean, okay, I got it backwards. The way in which the name Samhain is pronounced is not the way that it's spelled. It is spelled S-A-M-H-A-I-N. It would be read as Samhain. That's how when I saw it, that's the way I pronounced it, but that's not how it's pronounced. It's pronounced Samhain. Okay? And that particular day also is the celebration of Halloween and Hallowmass. Okay? But that particular day is the Celtic New Year and the Feast of Ceridwen, which is the goddess of death. It's during this time of the year that the deity of the dead is honored. And Beli, which is regarded as the Holly King, or the deity of the waning sun. See, during that time, the sun is waning, which means that the sunlight is incrementally decreasing each day. When the fall comes, daylight begins to decrease, right? And that brings us to the time of winter solstice, which arrives a couple months after, in December. But during this time, there is a focus on death. So what happens is you have this celebration called the Day of the Dead. Okay? And an honoring of the dead is what takes place in these pagan customs. I mean, people will put food out for the dead. They'll put drink out for the dead. And the whole idea of what we call trick-or-treat, before Halloween ever came into existence, that whole idea of trick-or-treat came as a result of people knowing that on October 31st, the spirits of the dead would come into their communities. And so they wanted to make sure that they had food and drink out on the porches for them, so that they could make sure that nothing would happen to them. Because if there was nothing left, something might happen to them in their homes. That's the whole idea of trick-or-treat. Okay? So, October 31st through November 2nd, this celebration was regarded as the descent of Inanna. I-N-A-N-N-A. This is a deity regarded as the Sumerian feast. Anytime you hear Samaria, that's also Babylonian, because Samaria was in Babylon. It's the Sumerian fast, recalling the descent of Inanna, which is the deity of life, going into the underworld. Okay? There's this deity called Ereshkigal. the deity of death and rebirth. Ereshkigal would detain Inanna and detain her until she agreed to have Dumuzi. Dumuzi is the deity of life and death. So Inanna would be kept, and she would remain there each winter. So basically what was going on, you have this deity of life that would go down into the underworld and would be kept by the god of death. In the Greek system, that god of death would be called Hades. Okay? So these celebrations that were going on were all focused around the deity of the dead. Another festival during the fall festivals celebrated between October 31st and November 6th. During mid-autumn, and I made mention of it, it's called the Day of the Dead, the Hollow Mass Festival. Festival marking the transformation of life to death, the end of the agricultural year. See, within the pagan system, the stuff that was going on within the cycle of the seasons would all be connected to these pagan deities. So when you had the final harvest taking place during the time of the fall, and you know, once fall came in, there's no need to try and plant anything in the ground because it was too cold. You know, cold season was coming, you know. It represented the whole idea of death. So they celebrated and honored the deity of the dead. So the end of the agricultural year, departure of migrating and hibernating animals. Animals, what do? When fall comes, they begin to go and hibernate. And decay and death of vegetal and animal life. What happens with the trees? The green leaves begin to turn yellow, orange, brown, then they fall off, right? This whole idea of death begins to set in. So it's observed by remembering departed ancestors and contemplating on one's own mortality. I mentioned how that the Day of the Dead was when people would celebrate and honor their ancestors, but also they believed that on the 31st of October that there would be this, I want to say this right, there would be this gate, this invisible gate where the spirits of the dead during this particular time would have the ability to pass through it to the visible world. All right? And they would come into the communities. And when they come into the communities, they would want to have gifts for them. That's where the whole idea of trick-or-treating came from. But these winter festivals are all centered around the deity of the dead. These fall festivals, rather, centered around the deities of the dead. And so when we look in our world today, we see the evidences of this all around us. Now, if you were to ask someone, as I mentioned earlier, if you were to ask someone, do you worship Seredwin, the god of the dead, all right, or Belly? They would say, I ain't never heard of no Seredwin, never heard of no Belly, you know, no. But the practice homage given to death with the costumes that children wear and all of these things and the movies that are produced. The pagan culture of time past has left such an imprint that every year, during certain times of the year, these customs are still there. Now, I know some will say, well, you know, we're just having fun. We just want the kids to have a good time. The customs are still there. And because the customs are still there, it's an evidence that paganism is alive and well. Because where the majority of people may not be adherents to the so-called pagan system with complete understanding, there are many who have a great understanding of paganism and do celebrate it and do recognize it. And during these seasons, they are ramped up to honor their deities. I'm going to close on that note. Any questions?
Well, we talked earlier actually about the Star of David. I brought that up, and it's actually kind of ironic that we're having this conversation because we talked about coupling and or some practices of sex magic. As I understand, the particular symbol is an upward triangle with the bottom pointing triangle, which, as I've heard, is supposed to symbolize basically the sexual union between the male and the female. It's a phallus, essentially. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, when we look at that symbol that has come to be known as the Star of David, that particular symbol is found in a pagan temple in India, where you see the symbol all over in this temple. So we do find pagan usage for that particular symbol. Now, as to how that particular symbol found its way in Judaism, now, and when I say it found its way in Judaism, I'm referring primarily to Orthodox Rabbinic Judaism, which is the Pharisaic Judaism that the Messiah spoke to his disciples of when the Messiah said to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, and disciples was trying to understand what he meant, and he said, well, beware of the teachings of the Pharisees. Well, we know that Rabbinic Judaism has its origins in Phariseeism. So the usage of that symbol within the framework of Rabbinic Judaism, and as far as how it arrived there are some different views with respect to that. And I'm not going to try and say that it is, quote unquote, a symbol that is of the devil with respect to how it is used. I'm not going to say that. And the reason why I'm not going to say that is because we also have the cross being used in paganism, all right? But also the same symbol of the cross is also used as the letter in the Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, called the Tav. And that symbol, the Tav, which represents the male goat, is a prophetic and symbolic reference to the Messiah, because we know that the Messiah died on the cross. When we look at the cross, for example, within the framework of the Messianic Israelite community, the cross had been used quite extensively in the 1st century and 2nd century where they used it. Another thing I want to make mention of as I'm bringing that information into it, because while there are symbols that are used in paganism, but that are also used in the framework of the faith, we have to be careful in how we, for example, begin to either demonize a particular group or subgroup of people, all right, that use it. We have to be careful because, for example, there is a symbol that was found in the upper room in Jerusalem. You know, when the Bible talks about the apostles being in the upper room where the Holy Spirit came and filled them, well, in that upper room, there was another room that was adjacent, or I'll just say somewhere in the upper room. There was a compartment where they baptized people that were coming into the Messianic Israelite faith, all right? And in that particular compartment, they called that the baptismal grotto. That's what they called it. There was a monk from the Orthodox Church, I believe it's Eastern Orthodox Church, and he was doing some excavating in the upper room, and he went into this room where the baptismal grotto was, and he found pottery, clay jars. One clay jar was used as the anointing oil container, because when people would be baptized, they would then anoint them with oil. Now, the reason why I'm saying all that is because on this jar, there's a symbol of a menorah, a Star of David, and a fish symbol with a cross in the fish symbol. Okay? Basically, it's showing the menorah and the fish being brought together, and this 6-pointed hectagram is formed. Okay? This was the symbol of the 1st century Messianic Israelite community. This menorah, star, and fish. Okay? So, with this symbol, we have an evidence of how the Messianic Israelite community, yes, that's a symbol that we have. We use it. It's a symbol that reflects both the menorah, representing a symbol in the temple, because that's one of the symbols of the house of Israel, is the menorah. And also we have the fish, representing the Messiah. He said that the apostles, he would make them to be fishers of men. So we see the connection there, where it's like there's a great deal of symbolism in there. You know what I mean? Where the fishers of men are from the house of Israel. See? But you see that hexagram there.
Yeah.
That what we call Star of David, what they call Star of David. Now, personally, you know, and I am aware of the symbol, that hexagram. I'm aware of the fact that that symbol, it has also been used in pagan temples. Fully aware of that. But when we see it showing up as a symbol used in ancient times among our predecessors in the faith, then what we have to do is we have to recognize that, okay, we have symbols that are made sacred unto the Almighty's purpose, but yet we know that they've also been used in pagan systems as well. Okay? And I said earlier that when we look at the pagan system, it's important for us to remember that the pagan system is a counterfeit system. So much of what it uses and what it pulls from is pulling from something that has come from the original. So yes, we recognize that. We recognize that. But yet we also understand that we cannot take away from the fact that we can see the symbol connected to something that's related to the ancient faith. Now, personally, for myself, personally, the only time that I am comfortable with the use of the star is when it is contained in the symbol of the menorah, star, and the fish. At this particular stage in my walk, I don't wear any symbols that display just the star by itself, because I'm aware of the fact that it has been used in paganism. By the same token, when it comes to, like, say, wearing a cross, I don't have a problem with wearing a cross at all. Personally, I don't. I don't generally have one on. I wear my tzitzit all the time. When I'm going out, I have my tzitzit on my scarf that I wear. But if I chose to wear a cross, I don't have a problem wearing it. I just don't. And I'm not against anyone who wears one. When it comes to the particular star, however, the star that's called the Star of David, because I'm aware of its paganistic use, I'm a little reluctant to wear it, unless it's contained within the menorah, the star, and the fish.
Makes perfect sense.
That's what I do. For those who choose to wear the symbol, I don't condemn them for wearing it, but I am aware of the fact that it is also used in paganism, and I appreciate you bringing that point up. This time we're going to go ahead and close with a word of prayer. I trust that everyone has been encouraged and enlightened by the teaching. Father, we do bless you. We thank you for your mercies, your kindness, and your goodness. We ask, Abba Yah, that you would continue to illuminate your Talmudim, your students. May they grow in their understanding of the way of Elohim. May they grow in their knowledge of the pagan system and its customs, that they may be aware of what to be careful of in their walk and in their life and in their practices. We thank you for illumination. We thank you for the scriptures. We thank you for the knowledge that you provide to us. Help us in our walk that we might live in such a way that pleases you and glorifies you. We thank you in Yahshua's great name. Amen. Well, for those of you who are watching us by live stream, I just want to say thank you for attending. I trust that this teaching has been helpful and beneficial to you. We also would ask that if you would so kindly share a donation as an offering unto the Almighty. If you consider this particular teaching to be a blessing to you, your gifts assist us so that we can do this work that the Most High has given us the responsibility to do, and that we might produce materials so that we can help many others to be able to be taught and discipled in the way of the Creator. Well, again, we thank each and every one of you for watching. You can go to our website at www.ncmmi.20m.com and you can share your donation. We do greatly appreciate it. But most of all, we ask that you pray for us, that we may continue to be a word or shall I say that we may continue to be a credible vehicle bringing the word of Elohim to the nations. We thank each and every one of you, and we say to you, Shalom.